So I'm sure you guys have heard of XDefiant, the upcoming Ubisoft shooter, and if you're an OG Call of Duty fan who is kind of unhappy with how the recent Call of Duty games have been, then I'm going to be explaining in this video why this game could be for you. If you're interested in XDefiant, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications, as I will be covering the game leading up to launch and obviously after launch. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. Now, firstly, I guess I should cover the differences that it does have to Call of Duty. There's a lot of similarities, but there are definitely some differences as well. It is somewhat of a hero shooter with the faction system, where you essentially choose a faction and a character to play as, and that character has their own abilities, but they're not nearly as prominent as like most other hero shooters, for example Overwatch, where that is pretty much the defining aspect of that character. In this game, they aren't all that big when it comes to the abilities. They're helpful and they're definitely useful for your team, but they don't really define how you play the game, if that makes sense. Outside of that, it is definitely very similar to Call of Duty in almost every other way, at least the older school Call of Duty games, especially when it comes to like the gunplay and the map design and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of similarities, but the, I guess, hero shooter aspect is just slightly different. Now, one thing that I personally hate about the recent Call of Duty games is the skill-based matchmaking, or better known as SBMM. For me, it has pretty much ruined the game for probably the last 4 or 5 Call of Duty games. It makes it so unenjoyable when every single game you get into is just trying to make you get a 1 KD. That is essentially the point of skill-based matchmaking, trying to make it as even as possible for everyone, which on paper sounds really good, but at the end of the day, it just means you're going to go 20 and 20 every game, and no one really has really good games or really bad games. No one gets better at the game. You're just being put into a pool of players who are just doing exactly the same thing every game. Now, Mark Rubin, who is the executive producer on XDefiant, and he was also the EP on some older Call of Duty games, as well as, here's a fun fact, he was actually the character on the cover of the original Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 games. He's been having a lot to say on Twitter about XDefiant, and he's actually said that the game will have absolutely no skill-based matchmaking in the casual modes. It's only going to have them in the ranked modes. I won't lie, I wasn't all that excited for this game when they first announced it. Kind of just thought it would be like a lot of the other shooters that try to step into the ring against games like Call of Duty, where it would just kind of die off very quickly. But as soon as he announced there was going to be no skill-based matchmaking, that definitely changed my mind. It kind of brings back the fun, like casual gameplay finally. Not every game is going to be the exact same thing. You're going to have some games where you go like 40 and 5. You're going to have some games where you get absolutely stomped on. And overall, it just brings back, I guess, the difference between each match, whereas how Call of Duty currently is with skill-based matchmaking, it kind of feels like every match is just identical to the previous one. Now, Mark has also tweeted that they are going to be working on a classic prestige system that will be added after launch, so that won't unfortunately be there at the launch of the game, but that is definitely exciting to hear as well. I think that's something that has been really missing in Call of Duty since the OG system was kind of removed. They've tried adding their own like new takes on the prestige system, but the way that the seasonal content works in the new games, essentially basing it around the monetization, they haven't really hit their strides with the prestige systems, and people aren't really happy about them. With a bit more of a classic prestige system, it's going to be something that's really good to actually grind for. In the current Call of Duty games, for example, you kind of get to level 55 and then that's about it. You can grind ranked, but if you're a casual player, that's really all you can do. But with XDefiant, they will be going back to that more classic prestige system where you can get to that max rank and then decide to pretty much start all over, and you'll get a bonus for doing that. So you might get an extra class slot, you might get like an extra cool perk or something like that, as well as a new emblem that kind of shows everyone else in the same lobbies that, oh, this guy's prestige number 10, he's been grinding away. It's just something fun that has really been missing since they took that out of Call of Duty. He actually also mentioned on Twitter that they could be working on something that is similar to the old school nuke from like Modern Warfare 2 and those sorts of games, which is obviously pretty much requiring like a 25 or 30 kill streak, but it results in the ending of the game. And that's something that, to be fair, they've brought that back in Modern Warfare 2, but it was missing from Call of Duty for a long time there. And I think that's something that's going to please a lot of old school Call of Duty players. He also said pretty recently that this game is going to be a love letter to the arcade arena shooter, which is obviously the same genre that COD has pretty much dominated over the last decade. And although it has still sort of dominated in terms of sales, it has definitely not dominated in terms of enjoyment over the last probably 5 to 6 years. I think a lot of people are becoming more and more frustrated with the franchise. And so I do think there is a bit of an opening for another game to come in and maybe not take over in terms of being the #1 shooter, but just providing something that is a little bit different. And for those of us who want that like old school Call of Duty itch to be scratched, this game could definitely end up being in just that game. Overall, I am very, very excited for XDefiant. In terms of the release date, we don't actually know yet, but they have said that it will be coming out pretty much within the next like month or two. There is no release date, which is definitely kind of odd, but I think they're going to kind of do what Apex did and essentially just drop it on the day. If you guys didn't know, it is a free-to-play game. So even if you aren't all that interested, I would still recommend to just download it when it comes out and play it, because obviously there's nothing to lose. If you download it and don't like it, just simply delete it. But I do think a lot of people are going to be able to download it and actually really enjoy this game. And I know for myself, as soon as it launches, I'm going to be grinding the absolute hell out of it. I'm keen to hear if you guys are keen on the game or not, so be sure to leave a comment down below. I will definitely consider covering it here on the channel, so if you are interested in seeing some more XDefiant content, be sure to let me know down below as well, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming XDefiant content. With that being said though, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.